One Punch Man, covering, Volume 1, Chapter 1-8. Now, Chapter 1, quiet and peaceful. A city is suddenly disturbed by an enormous blast that obliterates the surrounding area. Standing in the crater the blast left behind, is Vaccine Man. He slowly takes flight, powers up and fires multiple blasts at the city below. The energy blasts destroy the buildings and kill a large number of civilians. Meanwhile, Saitama is at home and watches the news, where the destruction and mayhem are being reported live. Saitama decides to stop it. Near Vaccine Man, a schoolgirl is seen crying for her parents. Vaccine Man approaches her and seems to lend her a hand, but the hand suddenly transforms into a monstrous claw and reaches for the girl. Luckily, she is saved by an incoming Saitama, who grabs the girl and dashes away from the monster. Vaccine Man asks for Saitama to identify himself, and he does, by saying that he's just an average man acting as an average hero. The creature is angered by this and aggressively tells the tale of who he is and where he came from. He transforms into a much larger and much more vicious version of himself and looms over Saitama. Saitama, however, is completely unfazed and throws a punch, instantly blowing a hole in the monster, killing it. Realizing that the fight ended with one punch again, Saitama yells in frustration. Chapter 2. 3 years before the setting of the start of the series, Saitama, with a full head of hair, has an encounter with the mysterious being Crablant. Saitama stands before Crablant, who seems surprised that he is not running in fear like the other people. Saitama sighs and Crablant comes to the conclusion that Saitama is a salary man, and due to the fact that he isn't running, he must want to die. Saitama agrees with that but states that he is, in fact, unemployed and is on a job hunt, and that he had already been rejected from a job that morning. Saying that he has lifeless eyes like himself, Crablant decides to let him off the hook, stating that his real prey is a child with a cleft chin. Crablant walks away and Saitama notices a child playing with a soccer ball in the park next to him, a child with a cleft chin. Saitama asks the kid if he did anything to a crab monster, and the kid agrees, saying that he drew nipples on the monster with a permanent marker. At that moment Crablant appears behind Saitama and goes to attack the child, but Saitama dives and saves the kid. Saitama says the kid needs to run, but the kid says he wants his ball. Crablant is confused as to why Saitama is trying to save the child, and that at this point it's too late to stop because he butchered some people on his way there, and that he'll do the same to anyone who makes fun of him. Crablant is in the middle of a rant when Saitama starts laughing, stating that Crablant reminded him of a villain from an anime he'd watched as a kid, at which point Crablant hits him and sends him flying. Crablant goes to attack the child and is about to do so, but gets hit in the head with a stone thrown by Saitama. Saitama states that he remembers his dream as a child had been to be a hero who could beat any villain with one punch, and he throws off his coat and wraps his tie around his hand and challenges Crablant. Crablant starts to beat Saitama up, hitting him once, twice, but before he can hit him a third time, Saitama loops his tie around Crablant's eye stalk and rips it out of his head, killing him. 3 years later Saitama, now superpowered and bald, is recalling the events of those days, and that even though he obtained an unbeatable power he is still unsatisfied. A Dangerous Being, Chapter 3. The chapter opens on Fukeo, who has just finished his new, ultimate steroid, Biceps Brachii King. Fukeo gives his new steroid to his little brother, Marigori, claiming that it will make him the strongest man alive. Marigori drinks the drug and his body immediately starts to transform, growing till he crashes through the ceiling and becomes taller than the surrounding hills. Marigori picks his brother out of the rubble of the building and sets him on his shoulder, who then proclaims them the Brain and Brawn Brothers, the strongest, most intelligent group in the world. The two of them head to the nearest civilization, D-City, the entirety of which he destroys in one swing of his arm. Fukeo then says to go on and destroy the next city. The country is in an uproar and multiple news stations report the disaster. As they head to the next town, B-City, Fukeo notices that there is someone sitting on Marigori's other shoulder, that someone being Saitama. Marigori mistakes which shoulder Saitama is on and accidentally swats the wrong shoulder where his brother is on, killing him instantly. When Marigori finds out whom he has killed, it was not Saitama whom he has killed but was his older brother Fukeo. After this, he then freaks out, lamenting that all he'd wanted was to have more power, and blames his brother's death on Saitama, grabbing him off of his shoulder and throwing him to the ground with all his anger. Saitama begins to get up and brush himself off when Marigori jumps on top of him and starts pounding Saitama back to the ground, leaving a gigantic hole. Thinking he victoriously defeated him, Marigori recalls feeling empty inside despite being the strongest, with Saitama agreeing, jumps out of the giant hole and then punches Marigori in the face, killing him, landing Marigori onto the B-City, accidentally destroying it. Dark Undergrounders, Chapter 4. Saitama is asleep in his apartment, but wakes up suddenly when his wall explodes and a hand reaches in and grabs his head. Saitama punches the arm of whoever grabbed him and the hand lets go, but he is then punched in the face, sending him crashing through a wall and down to the street below. When Saitama lands, his forehead is bleeding, but he has hardly any time before a creature pops out of the ground behind him and swings at him, sending him flying even though he attempted to defend, and when he gets up, he sees more of the creatures coming out of the ground. These creatures reveal themselves to be the subterranean people and intend to take over the world. They surround Saitama and begin to attack him. Saitama takes one out, but is quickly attacked by another. Saitama then rushes into the group of enemies, fighting madly until all of the subterranean people are dead at his feet. As Saitama is standing there on the corpses, he hears a voice behind him and turns to see the subterranean king bursting through the ground and is about to fight him when he hears his alarm clock go off and wakes from his dream. Sitting there stunned and disappointed, he hears the subterranean king yelling outside, so he goes and kicks him in the face, killing him in one hit. He declares that he will protect the surface and is about to fight the subterranean people, but finds that they have already retreated back underground, leaving a white flag with the words, "We're sorry," on it. Saitama is left severely disappointed. Ich Explosion, Chapter 5. Saitama is standing at the sink in his apartment, lamenting how powerful he has become and how now everything is too easy when a mosquito lands on the back of his hand, which he then swats. When he lifts his hand, the mosquito flies away, so he swats at it a few more times, missing each time and getting very angry that he can't hit it. The mosquito then flies off and meets up with Mosquito Girl. Saitama then turns on the news to see that there is a mass mosquito outbreak and that it is heading towards Z-City, at a disaster level of demon. A man is shown outside stealing from a store, mocking all the people who evacuated when a strong wind blows his hat off from behind. The man is then surrounded by mosquitoes who then suck all of his blood, and leave him an emaciated corpse. These mosquitoes then fly off to give the blood to Mosquito Girl, who complains that it is not nearly enough. She then notices a figure shrouded in her mosquitoes, so she sends more of them to the figure who then destroys them all and reveals himself to be the cyborg Genos. Saitama is then shown attempting to kill another mosquito but failing. Saitama, Chapter 6. The fight between Genos and Mosquito Girl begins with Genos firing a blast at Mosquito Girl, who easily dodges it and throws herself down at Genos and takes out his arm and flies off with it. As she flies away, she notices that her legs are gone below the knees and looks down to see Genos tossing them onto the ground. She then sends more mosquitoes at Genos so she can fly away. While Genos is distracted, she calls all of her mosquitoes to give her blood. Genos is about to attack the mass of mosquitoes surrounding Mosquito Girl when he hears someone yelling and turns to see Saitama running onto the street. Genos tells him to hide or he may die. At that moment all the mosquitoes swarm down towards Genos and Saitama, all of which get destroyed by Genos, creating a massive explosion and fireball. Genos then realizes about Saitama, thinking that he killed him in the explosion, but is shocked to see Saitama standing there unfazed, but completely naked. Mosquito Girl, now more powerful, attacks Genos, ripping him almost in half at the chest. Genos then spins around and attempts to punch Mosquito Girl, but she dodges his attack easily and starts to attack him mercilessly, eventually cutting off both his legs and shredding his torso in half. Genos begins to fall to the ground and decides that he will self-destruct to destroy her and is about to when Saitama slaps Mosquito Girl in the face, sending her flying through a building and into the distance, after that offhandedly remarking that he hates mosquitoes. Genos then asks Saitama his name and to be his disciple. Mysterious Raid, Chapter 7, Genos shows up outside Saitama's apartment, much to his chagrin. They go inside and Saitama gives Genos tea, telling him to leave when he's done drinking and that he's not looking for any disciples. Genos then goes into a rather lengthy description of his life and the history between him and the mad cyborg until Saitama tells him to come back when he can sum up his story in one sentence. The scene shifts to a building in a mountainous area with two men talking about Mosquito Girl's defeat. The men then express interest in Saitama's strength and decides to send him an invitation to the House of Evolution. The scene shifts back to Genos asking Saitama to teach him how to become strong. Saitama asks Genos if he's ready for the training, and Genos agrees. Genos then senses a presence drawing close to the apartment quickly. At that moment Kamakuri bursts through the ceiling and is killed instantly by Saitama before he can even say who he is. Genos mentions that there are more beings outside, so they leave the apartment to find Frogman and Sludgerous. Genos steps forward to take them out, but Saitama beats him to it, burying them upside down to their chests in the sidewalk. A hand then bursts out of the ground, grabs Saitama's ankle and pulls him underground until all that's visible is his head and neck, which he compares to being a plant growing through the concrete. Genos begins to rush to Saitama's aid when the cyborg armored gorilla bursts through a wall behind him. You mean this guy? Chapter 8. Armored Gorilla rushes to attack Genos, who easily blocks his attack and notices a large being walking towards Saitama. Beast King looms over Saitama and congratulates Ground Dragon, who has popped out of the ground, for incapacitating him. Genos then starts to run to Saitama's aid, but Armored Gorilla grabs his shoulder. Genos then turns and blasts Armored Gorilla away and begins to run to Saitama again, but jumps back as Armored Gorilla leaps in front of him and smashes the ground. As Armored Gorilla is getting out of the hole to confront Genos, Beast King is standing angrily in front of Saitama who is yawning because the ground is comfortable. Beast King then leans down and threatens to scratch out Saitama's eyes, so Saitama simply steps out of the ground. Beast King gets very angry and attacks Saitama, who dodges the attack easily, dodging the next several attacks with ease as well. During one of his attacks, Beast King accidentally kills Sludgerous and Frogman. Beast King becomes enraged and sends a flurry of attacks at Saitama, who weaves his way through the attacks and kills Beast King with a chain of punches. Ground Dragon gets scared and starts to dig away, but Saitama appears in front of him and then punches him out of the ground and into the sky. Saitama then notices Genos, who is standing over a defeated Armored Gorilla. Genos is asking Armored Gorilla about the House of Evolution, but he refuses, saying that Genos will be stopped by Beast King. At that point, Saitama walks over and shows Armored Gorilla Beast King's severed eye, so Armored Gorilla gives in and agrees to tell them everything. With this, One Punch Man Volume 1, Chapter 1-8. Arc. House of Evolution Arc, completed, but wait for extra. Extra, 200 yen. The chapter opens on a 12-year-old Saitama dozed off during his middle school opening ceremony. The scene then shifts to two delinquents asking three kids for their money. At that point a young Mumen rider, then calling himself Nameless Bicycle Commuter, shows up and attempts to stop the two delinquents. The scene then shifts to Saitama relaxing in bed, watching a news report about an escaped mysterious being. The scene shift again to a teacher berating Saitama for not doing his homework, and telling him to meet him in the teacher's lounge after school. After the school ended, Saitama gets stopped by the two delinquents known as Ripped Uniforms. The two drag Saitama out to the schoolyard and ask him for his money. Saitama refuses and then prepares to fight them, but gets beaten up easily. At that point the escaped mysterious being, Piggy Ban-Kon shows up and takes all the money the two delinquents had, which includes Saitama's money. It then runs away. The one delinquent then states that now he won't be able to pay for his little brother's lunch, at which point Saitama gets up and chases after the monster. He eventually catches it but gets knocked out for at least an hour. He then shows up at the teacher's lounge, beaten and uniform torn apart, and gets shouted at. After leaving the teacher lounge, he started to question his future, if he will be able to live properly. The scene then jumps forward in time to a Saitama carrying a child on his shoulders on a snowy hill, having just defeated a snowman monster. The child then asks if Saitama can beat up another snow monster, this one being significantly larger. At this point Saitama realizes he forgot to take out the trash. With this all video is completed, and you know what you have to do, just crack the red button and hit the bell icon.